Do you remember being that kid who used to love watching Harry Potter movies, or The Lord of the Rings, or maybe even The Shrek or Tangled, or like creature movies like Jurassic Park or Godzilla? I think all of us grew up to be fantasy readers. Hi everyone, welcome back to this channel. So today I thought I'd sit down and recommend some of my favorite fantasy books if you are a beginner to this genre. If you have someone who always thought that fantasy is intimidating to read, like it is a thick book, or there is made up world with a lot of made up words, and there is politics and it's hard to follow, you need a lot of concentration, and if these things kept you away from this genre, but you are like intrigued by things you see online and things that turn out to be TV shows and they are great, and we always say that books are better than the movies, so you always want to try it but never knew where to start, then tune in. I have few good recommendations for you. So fantasy as a genre is one of my favorites now. I started off reading thrillers and general fiction, and once I found fantasy, it soon became my go-to genre to pick a book and start reading. So when we say fantasy, what does it actually mean? It means being inside the monologue of not necessarily always humans. You can be reading as a dragon, as an ogre, as a fairy, not Peter Pan kind of fairies, the other kind, which you would see in a bit. You would see some of them in here, which are like the OG TikTok sensation books. I did give in to the influence, bought it, read them. I quite enjoyed some of them. And I think for most of the people out there, these books were the reason that they came back into reading. For me personally, one of this book is the reason I came back into reading, and then read around 150 books after that. So I think I'm indebted to some of these, and they really can grab the reader's attention and pull you through the whole book. So let's get started. My first recommendation is, it's a TikTok sensation book. If you're in this side of the internet, you have seen this, heard of it. This author is again quite famous. It is A Court of Thorns and Roses, Acotar, otherwise called, by Sarah J. Maas. She has quite a few books in her universe. There is Throne of Glass series, and there is Crescent City. I would suggest you begin with Acotar. A Sarah J. Maas book guide is a whole another video, but I'll just talk about Acotar. This book is quite simple for you to start. There is no complex characters or politics or world building. Pretty simple, and the magic system is explained very well, I would say, for a beginner. There's just a mortal land and there's the fairy land. Our main character, Feyre, is getting abducted by the king of, not the king, a king, or like a high lord of the fairy called Tamlin. He abducts her. She does this in order to save her family and her sisters, and we see what happens to Feyre after this. There are, I think, fewer characters that you have to follow in the first book, and it is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, just the first one. So that gives you an overall idea of what to expect. But I would say go in blind. Do not read up the plot in the internet or the blurb of the book. I would say that would make the twist and the character changes, the character development even more better for you, the experience, I would say. It is worth the hype, I think, or at least appropriately hyped. I would definitely suggest this is worth your read if you're starting off in fantasy. Next book that I have is again a TikTok sensation book. It's hyped so much. It's right now again trending because the third and final book is out now. It's The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I also have the second book, Iron Flame, somewhere here. But my recommendation is Fourth Wing. For a beginner fantasy reader, I would say start off here. Again, this book gives out a lot of the vibes of being in a magical or a military school that lets you train on dragons. So if in order to serve the society as kids, you would go into the school and it trains you under 4 sections. Like you can be either a healer or a scribe, who's kind of like a librarian, or you can be a dragon rider. So our main girl character, who is called Violet Sorringale, am I right? Yeah, Violet Sorringale, whose mother is kind of the principal of the school, forcing her to become a dragon rider where she wanted to be a scribe. So that's the premise of starting. That's all you have to know. Go into it. just expecting that. The book gets pretty intense right in the beginning. Like, the author is not scared to just kill off characters that you love. So just keep that in mind, which is also the reason that you would get invested in this book. Yeah, I would say it's not just people that you are learning about. You have conversation with dragons, and there's this one small dragon in this that keeps reminding me of the Cassie, I think, the dragon name in Dragon Tales cartoon that we had earlier. So yeah, so it's quite an interesting read, and I really enjoyed the first book. The second book, not so much, but I did not expect the ending of Iron Flame. I'm looking forward to read Onyx Storm, which is the third book. I would definitely review it. But yeah, Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Next up, this is one of my favorite books of all time. And the reason that I got back into reading is these two books. It is the Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom duology by Leigh Bardugo. I have both of them here. I have the physical copy of both. How to explain without spoiling these books. Now, to give you some context, there is a Netflix series called Shadow and Bone, which is an adaptation of the Shadow and Bone trilogy by the same author, which happens before Six of Crows. So it is a prequel. Now, you don't necessarily have to read those 3 books to start Six of Crows. I did not read the Shadow and Bone before this. I still understood all the references because you still get enough explanation and introduction in these books for those characters who just show up here at the end. But now that you have a series, you can go ahead and watch it on Netflix first and then pick up Six of Crows. You get even more of a world building done. And you get a visual representation of how the world is. The world is called Grishaverse. Yeah. So the whole atmosphere is always like a slum, grimy, and it is always dark, but there is magic, there is guns, there is assassin, ninjas, and there are thieves. And our main character, who is leading a gang of bandits to do a huge heist that would save him from the kingdom, is Cass Drecker, and he is a thief, and he has running kind of an underworld mafia kind of is setup. But definitely suggest you start off your fantasy journey with these books. I loved them, and it actually had the hook for you to I immediately went to the second book after the first, so they are definitely attention grabbing and bingeable. So Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. Now, from the section of cozy fantasies, I would like to recommend Assistant to the Villain and Apprentice to the Villain. So this is one after the other. It's a series continuation. This book is not high stakes. It's just so it's a goofy, funny book, I would say, where a villain is looking for an assistant, and our main character Evie lands the job, and she just have to work in an office for an assistant to a villain. Now, there is still magic here. There's still supernatural or natural things happening, but it's pretty much a human interactive environment that is set in a fairyland kind of a thing. I don't want to spoil the book by giving in more information, I would say. And there's a sidekick he's called Kingsley, who's a frog who would just hold up just comments, like savage comments based on situations that are happening. I think there's an image. Yeah, you see him? Focus. Yeah, right here. That's him. It's pretty funny. I did have some laugh out loud moments reading this book. And there is a romance subplot. Not just a subplot, there is a huge part of it, at least when it comes to the second book, with the romance. And it is, again, there is a lot of yearning. It's not just right up front they get together or anything. So I really enjoyed The Assistant to Villain. And it's good. It's just a fun time. It's just like reading comics, kind of. So you don't have to focus a lot or like remember a lot of names or like weird place names. It's easy to grasp and quite bingeable. The final book in the series is coming out this year, I think in April or August, I think. So it'll be a good time to start. The next book that I want to recommend is, it was a Kindle Unlimited book. I don't have the physical copy of it. It's a new author that I discovered last year, and man, do I love her. And there are a lot of books from this author. If you like, you're in a great place to start. That is Paladins Grace by T. Kingfisher. Now, let me give you a gist of what this book is about. Paladins are actually warriors or knights of a god. So gods do not fight their own battles. Instead, they send these paladins to fight for them, and they get this superhuman strength when they go into battle from these gods. So in this world, paladins are treated as equally as gods. They have quite a supreme position in the society. So our lead character's god dies, and he did not know that that's something that gods could do, like die on them. And suddenly he is in an existential crisis. He does not know what to do. He don't have any of the powers he had before. He doesn't go into battles. So he moves in as a backup soldier for another god. So that is a premise in which the book starts off, and he meets a perfumer in the city who is our female character lead, and it is the awkward love story and friendship that they hatch together, which continues throughout the book. There is a mystery that they both encounter and together solve, and at the end of the day, save the kingdom kind of a book. But the dialogues and the awkward conversations that these characters have are so funny. And the premise, or like the type of books that T. Kingfisher writes, is, I've said this before, the best way to explain this is the movie Shrek, and the most bizarre character combinations that you would see, like the dragon and the donkey pair that you see and the romance they have. So imagine that's a kind of bizarre situations this author writes, and you thoroughly enjoy it. So Paladins Grace by T. Kingfisher. I also want to recommend, if you are not looking for an adult fantasy, if it's a YA fantasy that you want from the same author, there is A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. This is, again, the protagonist is like a 16-year-old girl, so I think it's a bit more toned down, but it's quite an adventure that this girl goes on. Again, it's in the same world of Paladins Grace. You get to see paladins in the background and all, but this girl is a protagonist here, and she's a baker who knows little magic, and all the magic that she can do is to rice bread. But again, it's a fun time, and it's a good place to start. It's not that complex, easy writing, and it's grabbing your attention and making you laugh. That is T. Kingfisher for you. My next suggestion is, again, this comes under cozy fantasy. It's not a high-stake fantasy. It's called Legends and Lattes. I read this recently, but I think this was one of the books that I felt if I read this in the beginning of my fantasy journey, I would have been, more forthcoming to the genre. So this book is about an ogre who was an assassin, and she is retiring, and she wants to start a coffee shop. So she's actually introducing the concept of coffee to a new land, and all these trolls and other animals there, they find coffee for the first time. And this is about how she starts that business, and the different sales strategies that she would have to do in order to grow her business. It's quite funny, the setting that this is happening, like a business of a cafe, but there's magical creatures there as customers. So it's very good. And towards the end, we see the assassin's past catching up to her, and there's a little bit of drama at the end. But overall, the book is very atmospheric. You actually feel the smell of coffee and being in a cafe with the book. So it's quite close to home, and it's a very grounded book. I would say it is a single book, and it's under 350 pages, and I would say it's less commitment. I think it's a very good book to start off fantasy with. Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. So if you're still listening, thank you for your time, and that's most of the books that I had as recommendation if you are a beginner. There are a lot of other books like Cruel Prince, or like the Ballad of Never After series and Throne of Glass, but I don't think they would be that easy to grasp and digest if you are a beginner. But let me know if you wanted to hear an in-depth review of the Throne of Glass series. I'm reading the final book, Kingdom of Ash, which is just it's a thick book. So when I finish, I plan to do an in-depth review. Let me know if you wanna hear it. So I'll catch you in the next video.